Hello, I'm going to give you a demo now on painting glass. So here goes. All right, just bear with me while we get things organized. I'm going to try and make sure that I'm not in your way. And I guess right now it's just a matter of just getting set up. So it'd be pretty good. You're going to see up above what I'm going to be painting. All right. And I think now it's just a matter of just getting the paints all ready to go. And I think we're just about ready to get started. So the thing about glass material is that obviously it's transparent, and you know, whatever light passes through it. So you just have to really think in terms of warms and cools and your values. All right, which I think is always important in any painting that you do. All right, so we're just about ready to go ahead and get started. As usual, I usually start by trying to come up with some composition. And, you know, with gouache, this is on gray board, you really don't have to worry so much about it, but because you can paint over it. But I tend to like to sketch with something. Today I'm going to sketch with red, all right? And, you know, see what we get when we do that. I got to get myself somewhat in the middle of this, all right, so that I can see it. So bear with me. I'm going to tilt the board just a touch so that I can see what I'm painting. All right, and also so you can see what I'm painting. All right. So here we go. All right. As usual, I'll try and decide where I'm going to place things. All right. And you can kind of get an idea of how I'm kind of setting up the space. I'm not going to paint a whole painting, but I'm going to paint a section of it so that you can see what I'm doing at this point. All right. You see me, you know, this is all visual rhythm, because what I do is I tend to break things down into line and pattern. All right. And emphasis. I'm trying to make connections, all right, to elements that we're working with. And you know, just in this stage of it, it is about placement. So if anything, just you know, give it time, because I think that's one of the issues that we always have as a challenge, is that we try to make things happen too soon. So you know, look at your space in between, and you know, develop you know, your composition. All right. So I think this works for me at this point. I want to make sure that I know that I'm looking up at these. This one I'm kind of looking at eye level. This one I'm looking up. All right. I'm looking to see where these things relate to one another. All right. How much distance there is and how far down it is. All right. And any lines that connect. All right. Because I think that if anything, we want to do something like that. And just play the design. All right. So after you do that, next thing is to go ahead and really look for your darks. I like to take my darkest blue and maybe mix it with my darkest kind of burnt sienna. All right. That gives me an interesting thing. This one is going to be very interesting because you go after mostly negative space. All right. That's the nature of what it is to really work with contrast that are transparent. So you start to realize that you're really working with dark space, and that your highlights, all right, are going to be the highlights that you're going to put in here as you're developing your design. All right. So if anything, this is what I've gotten so far, and I'll just block it in like that. That's my early stage of the piece. I'll even find the negative space as it goes down here. And, you know, it is a lot about lost edges. So just keep that in mind, and values, and warm and cool. All right. I think that far too often we tend not to see that. All right. Actually, I'm in this piece. I'm not gonna do my portrait though, it might be a good idea. All right, to have this piece here with my head here. All right, which is kind of interesting the way that's working. All right, but I'm not gonna probably do my portrait, okay? So, as we work down the center of things, we see where the value changes are. And, you know, we can kind of go after those patterns of dark, all right, that we see. And, the area that I'm really gonna concentrate on is this one and, this one here, all right? So I really wanna get that to work for you. I'm also gonna go to a larger brush right now, only to really cover the paper, quickly enough so that, I don't have to kind of, wait so long, okay, to get this to work. All right, so now you see me, and this is a kind of a bluish color. All right, it's not black. All right, because it's not really that dark. We are going to go after some darks, and when we do, I will use the black somewhat, okay, to make the dark a little stronger. So if you take your darkest red, your darkest blue, and your darkest green, okay, you'll make a color that's like black. All right, so you'll get an idea of what I'm doing here. And you know, we're talking in terms of seeing the silhouette. You know, these glasses and that really truthfully are being made by the space around them, though we have the red feather that's here. All right, and then I have another glass that's back here, and we can kind of feel the dark against that one. This is a little grayer, so we're going to throw some gray in here, just so that we don't play the extreme contrast. All right, but you know, again, we have that dark in here, and the dark here, and then the dark right here, and we see that shape being relatively dark, and then getting light over here, meaning that it's a negative space that we're seeing. It's funny, but this object is darker as it comes down onto this surface because the surface itself is lighter. So just keep that in mind. All right, try to draw it clearly enough to get a feeling for what's going on. But truthfully, you know, everything has to stay painterly. So you do your best to kind of get that to work. All right. I think that's one of the things with gouache. It's really interesting is how we might do something like that. All right. And of course we have the color that's in here. So now the next thing is to kind of think in terms of the highlighting, and we do have warm light. Keep in mind that we have warm light. So we're really going to go after the highlights of the warmths. All right. I think this is, you know, we see that here as the way this plays is this bill that I have in the water, and we have a kind of gray or greener light over here. So now we'll kind of throw that in, kind of makes it a little bit more opaque, and helps to understand what's going on here. And if we can find anything that's close, or perhaps maybe it is a strong highlight or some interesting little what we call accents, they help to just throw them in at this point. All right, because truthfully, you want to be able to build on it. All right, so you know, if you feel any of these, you can kind of come back and work on it, and also feel the rhythm inside something. All right, if you feel any upward movements like that, throw them in. We have right now an area, it's kind of greenish brown, kind of lighter gray right in here, which is part of that $10 bill. All right, and you know, it's not easily seen. So really, truthfully, we're kind of playing with this idea a little bit more. All right, but don't ignore other things too, which means, like, for instance, your accents, which I think really for anything, when we're making anything with reflections or or anything like this, we want to kind of go after the accent, all right? And you know, I do have a flat brush, which I think we talked about last week. I really like using a flat brush with gouache because it helps you to kind of build the surface by just flatly painting it. All right, and just making it all work. So you know, I see the green that's in here, so we need to kind of throw the green light in here. Get a little bit of an angle in here, so we'll just kind of build that into it. All right, our light is on the left side, so you really want to communicate that, right? Because I think that if anything, we can kind of feel maybe the shape a little bit. All right, I have to lightly squint, but I'm going to kind of pull that shape out, something like that. And of course, we have the center of this dark area right here, which I think we can kind of just throw in now. And I'm not worried about things moving a little bit more because truthfully, we are working with you know, a surface that is transparent. So you really, if you got a dark background, you're going to have darks moving through this. All right. And you know, warms and cools. And so now you're going to get something like that. But the key to this right now is what's going on the tabletop, because that's what tells you where the light is. All right. And you can kind of play your contrast against the cup. All right, here. And we're just going to kind of go like that. But you can see what happens as soon as I put some of this down, and how all of a sudden, you know, that made such a difference. All right. And then of course we can play with the contrast a little bit more here, because it's getting redder and darker as it's going across. All right. And of course with gouache you can layer it so it doesn't seem to be so extreme. All right. And of course in the front we have another piece of intense color, which is the front of the box here. All right. So you can kind of get an idea of how I'm playing that now. And I'll play this these contrasts a little bit more, trying to get them in. And I think with a brush like this, you can really just lay paint on like that. It's not a problem to do. All right. And then if you want to take your time, you can start now to take your time a little bit more to start working away from areas. But like, for instance, this area in here is really just a few quick little highlights. All right. And I'll try and make that a little bit better. All right, here. Okay, so that we get an understanding of what's going on. And of course, the dark. One of the keys to all of this is how rich are the darks. And truthfully, they always are really dark against the light. So just keep that in mind as you're putting things in, that you want to try and get that to happen. And then you can kind of just adjust the shape and things like that for the highlight. Okay. And I think that what we're going to be doing now is a lot of it is warm and cool. It really deals with temperature and really understanding that temperature. And if you let areas dry, you notice that I'm working all around. Okay. If you let those areas dry, you're always able to come back and work right on top of them. All right. So I think, if anything, that's one of the things to keep in mind. This is sort of a greenish highlight here. So we've got that green building in there. I kind of like what's going on here. It's really funny how this is all working that way. But you know, we have to kind of build our contrast and some of this other stuff that's going on relative to it. And so, you know, I'm going to start to develop the contrast and the edges. All right, because edges play a significant part in the design of anything that you're painting. And we have this really bright red back here. One of the things about the red will read as light because of its saturation. But at the same time, there's a light side and a dark side to this red feather. And we want to just kind of place the red in right now. It's the one that really defines the form a little bit more. And we just kind of layer it like that. All right. So I can always come back and warm it up with a little bit more yellow. All right. But at this point, we want the dark side of the feather, and then we want the light side of the feather. And the light side of the feather is obviously going to become more of an orange yellow light. All right. Red is mixed with orange. So now we have that red feather that's taking place there. I want to come back in here to make sure that you understand that we're looking up at this. All right. And of course, we want to place some of our contrast, some of the dark shapes that we have. Okay. And how those dark shapes. Now you can see I'm using sort of black here. Okay. To kind of bring up those values a little bit more. And, I can mix blue in there and everything, but the black tends to be the color that really does resonate as far as the dark is concerned. All right. So you can kind of get an idea of how I'm kind of working that. And I will look for that against the play against this glass as well. And I'll try to play the transparencies as well. Okay. So I think, but one of the keys is exactly where are the edges that you're really responding to. And I'm really responding to an edge in here. I'm also going to put some more blue into it so that it really takes on a little bit more of the complement for the red. All right. But now we have this this blue shape, and I might even throw a little bit of gray into it just to make it softer. And the glass bows out. So I really got to think in terms of the way it's bowing, and it gets darker up above. So I'm going to really make the dark above it stronger. Okay, and this time I'm using a purple, and that's going to really bring out the edge of the glass above the where the feather is. And anytime you want to make anything light, the key is that you can lighten it up or you can darken the space next to it. So here we're darkening the space so that the glass tends to feel like it's being defined by the negative space, right? And again, the same thing is happening here. And actually, I'm using a darker violet right now, all right, to get this to really read. And I think again, understanding edges, I think, are really important. And not all edges are going to be the same. Some of this is going to get softer and grayer, so you want to make sure that you understand that part of it. All right, but also understand that the dark makes the light, and you can then kind of model off of that, and you see how my brush is working. All right, so now I'm going to come back in here, do the same thing with this dark violet. All right, on this side, because that's really popping that light. All right, and then we're going to kind of come up here and again display that contour a little bit more. All right, and this is one of the things about sitting off to the side. I'm somewhat off to the side, so my contour might be a little strange at first. Okay, so I got to really look at that and make sure that the contrast is working. All right, and then of course we have this kind of light area here, kind of milky. All right, it takes place right about in here. And if we can paint shape, all right, that's the key. So I think that when we look at what you have to do, you have to look at the pattern of warm and cool, and then also light and dark. Okay, to get the feeling of like the dollar bill has a band in here now. All right, so we'll kind of throw that band in. I knew when I took this, I was going to have this as a challenge, because truthfully, it's kind of like a fun thing to paint. but at the same time, it's not gonna be that easy. All right, so much. And so and I'm gonna find the contrast. This tends to become an oranger contrast here going across, not as strong, very soft. All right, and we're eventually gonna come back with our some of our other brushes here in a second, just to get the feeling of control, which I have to try and do to make this work. All right, so we're looking at trying to make that happen, and now I got to get back up in here, and this is where I can use the blue. All right, I made it warm, but truthfully, it becomes more of a dark blue, and then it really gets dark right about in here. So I throw that dark in like that. All right, and then this kind of thing blows and makes whatever's inside there stand out. So now we have this going across something like this. All right, and I might want to try and do this class at the same time. It's a little bit different. It's milky. All right, there's a lot of white in it, so we can kind of throw those whites in. All right, and I'm just looking to see how things are disappearing here. This gets a little darker back here, to kind of define the edge of that piece that we just did. And when you're using a flat brush, you just use your brush stroke, which I think really works too. And like I said, judge the warm and coolness, because honestly, this tends to get a little lighter over here. All right, I'm just trying to find the right color on my palette, but it gets a little bit lighter on this side. And so now we're bringing up that light. All right, and we want to mimic the feeling of this glass, so we've got to make it symmetrical. So just keep that in mind as you're working. That sometimes the difficulty is in losing that symmetry. All right, but you can see now me using a few little cool highlights and how I've defined that. I don't want to spend time just in one area, so I will come back down into here. And one of the things, this is a lot darker than the paper, so now we can kind of come back in here and bring that in. And we do have a strong highlight, all right. And then there's a sort of warm reflection of the tabletop through the glass, so it becomes much more in the way of a warm color. All right, and just studying value. I mean, this is real important right now. How dark things become and how light they become. All right, because you really want to see how that's working. All right, now I've got a small brush, and I'm going to come back with some highlights now. They're important, okay, and especially with glass, they make for where you're going to look. So, like for instance, right here is where I look into the band there. As I go up here, real interesting. I get a blue spot right here. I'm going to take some blue. All right, but this becomes my strong piece of light, and it's relatively cool. All right, and when you do something like that, you might want to try and make the space around it darker. All right, just to make it feel like it's a stronger highlight. And I think you see how I'm doing that. All right, so that becomes a real important moment. All right. And of course, this right here becomes a real important moment. And all of this, you've got to be able to lay these on very thickly, okay, which I think sometimes is hard. And then there's a really bright yellow highlight right here. So we're going to use, actually, I'm going to use my yellow, mix it with the white. It's mostly white, okay, but we have this strong highlight right here. And I think that when you start to put that in, all right, and we need more white on it, so I'm going to throw some more white on it. It's a lousy brush, so it's not one of the better. Smaller brushes, but, you know, just enough to kind of, get this might be a little bit better, but it's bigger, all right? So I'm able to pick up more paint and thicker paint, and then just put that on there like that, all right? And if it's not light enough, let it dry for a second or two. And, you know, just judge the warm and coolness of your highlights. These tend to be a little bit warmer. All right, so when I'm putting them down, I'm seeing that they feel a little on the red side. So I might just put a little bit of red into them. All right, and you know, where there might be a second highlight there. And you know, and then how this light is going here. And then we have these three lights here, and we want to see their change of value and color a little bit. All right, so they change a little bit in the way we respond to them. And they're leading to that piece there. So you can see right now, things are starting to come together because highlights play a significant part. All right, and anytime you're called accents, really. All right, this is a blue highlight. All right, and what it does is it makes for a kind of foggy blue-green area right here. I'm trying to use this brush, a small one, which doesn't work. Should use the larger one. But we want to really get the kind of a green blue kind of feeling in here. All right, because it's where the reflection is. So now we have that going like that. And you know, whenever we have something like this, just really look closely at things, because we do need that area that we call you know, where this circular piece of the money is, all right, and inside there. And we can kind of play that shape and just, you know, again, make it a little bit lighter in the center. All right, as we're building that. And you know, if we do feel another highlight in there or something like that, just kind of, you know, play it so that you lean back and take a look at it. All right, because the main thing is that you really want to get that feeling of how you're building that shape. All right, and of course we have writing on here, and that writing, let's go with the bands first. All right, we have this historic band that's coming across and going right up to the light, right up here. So I think we start to do that, and we'll mix a little bit of black with it, just or something else, just to make it so that it's duller. All right, but you can kind of get an idea now how I might do that, and then of course it gets broken by the by this, and you know, leads itself into that space, something like that. But we do have this border above it, so we want to carry that. And then of course we have the words that are in here, which we can kind of follow across. All right, and anywhere where the light is breaking them, we want to break the words. So, you know, just let that happen. And you know, we can carry that across into here now, and we can carry that border across here. And I think that when we do that, we're going to move this one highlight a little bit, all right, because it's in the wrong place, and that's the blue highlight that we did earlier. So I'm just going to move it down to here, okay, and of course we have to have that white on there, so you really have got to make it so that it feels like it is a highlight, all right, and it might be smaller than the other one. All right, when we look at the design, all right, but you know, truthfully, it doesn't really matter. It can be bigger or smaller, and you don't want to wind up making it so that it doesn't work. So you just have to be careful how you handle that size shape. All right, but now you kind of get an idea, and it starts to get a little lighter over here as it's going across this space here. So I can use my touch that way. I'm going to come back now and bring up the light a little bit more in this yellow area. All right, so that you really feel the contrast a little bit more. And you know how it's bending, so we want to try and get that to happen. And we'll try to get closer to the color and value a little bit more as we're doing this, okay? So this is where we are at this point, and you can kind of get an understanding that, yeah, we're gonna have little highlights in here, okay? But not necessarily, and it's gonna be at an angle, all right? So, you know, that's the paper. And if we have to throw some more warm color into it, all right, right in here, because it feels a little on the too much on the cool side. So now we're just going to throw a little bit of highlight, but now we need to go and make this a little cooler again. So now we're going to bring that in, all right, and that will, you know, we have to get the values right. So remember that what we're doing is going after the highlighting, all right, and so, you know, our eye plays through this, and we just have to study the value and how, like for instance, the light gets stronger down at the bottom, right? So when we look at the highlighting here, it's lighter down here against the area that's the liquid in the in there. All right, and then we have, there's an interesting kind of dark bluish reddish highlight, not highlight, but kind of a linear line that goes down along that side, and that kind of breaks that a little bit, makes it feel more like a you know, the dollar bill. Now what I'm doing is I'm coming back down and through here. I want to follow this down because obviously that color is an important color, but it is duller than the one above. So we don't want to make it too much lighter, all right? So I think that this is real important, and we can kind of feel a little bit warmth in there. So we'll throw some more warm color in. But now you see me kind of playing that line like that. And if anything, all right, one of the things, by the way, that I really feel the dark pushing up against the light right here. So I think that that's real important, and we can feel that going on through this area here, okay, and that's what's making the feeling of the dollar bill, all right. And then of course we have this area down below, which is sort of a greenish band that's going across, and you know, we can make that bigger if we want, but it's not that important to you know, again, it's sort of the sizing, all right. We have that band, we have the other words in here, so we're going to try and just make them feel like words, right, as we do that. But at the same time, watch the size. So I'm going to come back in here and just adjust the size a little bit, maybe a little bit more lighter, okay, just to kind of get the feeling of that. I always have to kind of squint as I'm doing this, just to make sure that I got it the way I want it, right? And highlights, we have warm and cools, so just keep that in mind, that orange highlight that we have, you know, how much white do we add to it to make it really stand out, all right? But now we're kind of going after these little sections of light like that. And we have this area to the left over here, which is really kind of very strong light and kind of warmer, all right? So if anything, now we can kind of use our dark violet, mix it with some color here, and really start to get that to kind of come out right against that band of light, right? Because I think that's an important part of this, and we can kind of play the pattern of shape that we see, all right? And you know, again, just understand that you can only show so much, all right? And the other part of it that really is important and maybe is getting lost is this really strong highlight that's right here, we have to really feel like a highlight, all right? So that means that we have to dull or darken areas around it, all right, so that it becomes somewhat of a highlight, all right? So just keep that in mind, otherwise you're gonna lose your highlight, all right? And we can always come back and add more white to this as we're going along. Make it either go into our tube and pull out a nice strong piece of white, or if you can find it on your brush there like that, and do it. All right, and then just kind of follow the light down so that we understand what's going on with the light. We do have a few little highlights over here we can throw in, and of course we have this area which gets warmer and darker and grayer over here, so we want to just start to get that to work a little bit. All right, and you can kind of get an understanding of what's going on now, and how much of the highlighting is going to be important. Okay, but one of the things about this class is that it is vertical. It has vertical strokes going on in here. All right, and you really want to understand that because it's moving up and down against what's behind it, and I think that you'll see how I'm handling this now relative to the background, really looking to do that and to try and get that feeling of the highlight going on above. So now I'm going to this is a sort of a cool highlight rim that's going around the glass. All right, and you try to get it to kind of work, because if you don't, it's going to feel like you are off. So you can kind of get an understanding of how I'm building that now. That's our things are starting to come together, right? And I think that we can look at the always, because you have warm objects or round objects, you're always going to have highlights and accents, and just look for where they are, because sometimes they're down the center of something. All right, maybe not that big, but that's kind of what it looks like. And you can kind of soften that too, all right, as well. And then of course the highlight on the dollar bill right about here is very important, because that's right through. So now we're starting to get this to kind of work. Okay, I think I'm happy, and it hasn't taken that long to really start to get a feeling of that. But also keep in mind that you really want to go after highlights outside this. All right, so like for instance, we have a highlight up here, and that pulls my eye away from that. All right, and I think that sometimes we tend to not understand that. And also, we also want to understand that when we do have a highlight and it's stronger right there, there will be a dark pushing up against it. All right, and there will be a dark pushing up against it here. So wherever that highlight is the strongest, the dark will be pushing up against it. All right, and then of course we have a nice soft kind of warmish reddish kind of highlight or light right in here. So we want to throw that in, and we'll go the kind of patterning of the dark in here now. There's sort of a pattern that's going on, and how do we want to throw that relative to that. And then of course we have that again that band going across here. All right, and and just to understand it a little bit, because it gets warmer, but kind of redder in a way, kind of red orange, but we feel that shape right in here. Okay, so we really want to make that shape. It's right there like that, and then we want to there's a little red thing inside, and that kind of does something interesting. So we want to take advantage of that. Now we can kind of come back to the feather, because I really want to play the feather against this. All right, and to try and really get that light to appear on that feather. And as it goes through that glass, it gets darker and it gets cooler. All right. So we really want to feel that that penetrating that glass. And if we can feel any reflections of that, which by the way, I can feel a warm reflection over here. So all of a sudden that's picking up the edge a little bit. And now we can go to Thomas Jefferson's face or whoever is in the bill and maybe just make the idea of a face here. All right, which I think might work. All right, we'll see. But that's the way it works right now. Now I'm gonna come back. I need that really flat brush that I was using. All right, I had a bigger one, I thought, but maybe not, but I sure thought I did. Maybe it fell on the floor. 1 second. Yeah, it's down the story of my life. All right, bear with me. Okay, because I always drop my brushes. So now I'm going to come back and really work some of the other areas, all right? Some of the highlighted areas. And I do have this area of white paint that I have here, so it lends itself to kind of throwing in the highlights. Now, this is a cool green highlight here, all right? And you see it's running. I didn't want it to run, but let's let it run a little bit. But we're gonna just kind of throw those cool highlights there. We have this cool highlight here, which we want to try to make happen. All right. And there is a certain coolness to that going up in there. I keep looking at this one little area here and maybe adjusting it in its color. All right, and maybe make it simpler. Okay, so that we read it in a way. And our light is coming from the right side over here, so we definitely want to get the feeling that, like for instance, when we look at this shape, that it's lighter on the right than it is on the left. And of course, we need a little bit more green in there too. So we're going to throw that green in it like that. That just kind of makes for the idea. All right, there's a sense of a dark, all right, that I feel right about in here. All right, so it kind of came down in here and broke that up a little bit, and in a way that actually works better, all right, than what it did. All right, so now we're into making our darks even darker. So now we're going to really come back. This is where we layered these colors on, and we really bring up the darks where we feel the darks are the strongest. Okay, pushing up against this glass. And I think that, you know, you have to squint. And truthfully, whenever you leave anything there's a light around there, it's going to make things, it's going to confuse us. So we really want to understand the dark in this space here. All right, so that it doesn't confuse us. All right. So now we're starting to get this thing kind of look like a transparent object. I pick up a little piece of green light going across here. All right, which I can do with a brush. And that kind of makes it transparent too. And then, you know, you have a kind of a warm, cool kind of play up in here, which is some kind of object that's behind that actually makes this area warmer. So now we're throwing that up there, and we're going to come back down in here, and we're going to play the dark against the glass here a little bit more, and you're going to have these cool highlights that are coming down through here, and that's real important to understand and try to make happen. And they tend to feel like they're somewhat vertical, and then they tend to feel like they're getting lighter as they're coming over here to the left side. So I'm going to take my white, mix it with yellow, and just get this to feel like a warmer, lighter highlight. And so now we're starting to play that against this as well. All right. I know that little object, I've got some small brushes. I hope this one will work better. But I'm going to just come back into this a little bit more, just for a little bit less of the intensity of the green, and maybe perhaps just a feeling of the way the light is working there. And you know, just keep in mind that you just have to kind of look at these little nuances of things. All right, this brush doesn't carry a lot of paint on it, so I'm going to do something with it. All right, but you know, I want to fill that as it's going there, and then we have a darker moment right pushing up against it. All right, right about here. So we really want to get that. This is where we really refine things even more, and then understand the highlights of the light. All right, because here's where we have a little bit of a highlight, because the light comes down into this area here. All right, and I'm going to make some green with it, because I think that we have to kind of soften that a little bit. All right, and you can kind of get an idea there. And then of course we have the band going across there. That helps to define things. The band up above, we have the same kind of thing going on here. There's a band of light hitting that. And like it disappears a little bit. So we're going to come back, use some green and go through it. Right. And I really want to get this highlight on this far left hand side. All right, because this is where we have a good strong highlight. So we want to base it on that. But this isn't as strong as the highlight that's right here. And again, that highlight just doesn't feel strong enough. So in order to make it feel stronger, we have to take our complement, all right, and we have to really make it darker around it, all right, so that it really starts to pop as a highlight. All right, so now you're seeing me using that, and of course that's seeming to make a lot of sense. And you know, then we have some highlights in other places. All right, we're talking about this highlight being so strong right there. All right, and how red it was, or how orange it was. It's a redder, oranger highlight, but at the same time, we have to really pop the light in it. So, and then as things go away from us, like for instance, we have these little moments of highlight right about here. Okay, and we have two little highlights over here. All right, and then we have the two highlights that are right about there. Center, we have the shadows going on in the center. All right, we have the blue highlight here. How dark do we want it to become? All right, I'm going to make this even darker. All right, right about here, so that we really go after that highlight. Okay, and you know, we're just playing things now just to see what's going on here and how this is disappearing against here. And it's interesting how this red, there's a red line in here, but that red line really makes this area. And if you really can understand the warmth there, that would be a good idea. We also have a little bit of a cool kind of highlight right along the edge here, so we can kind of make that a little bit stronger. All right, and you know, again, look for other things from the standpoint of you know, softening values or whatever that you want. You know, like for instance up here, how thick do you want that line to be? All right, it's going to be up to you. But now we have to kind of move around. Okay, and one of the things that we see is we see a really strong light right here. All right, and this is real important because it sets the stage for how we respond to this space. All right, But it's not as strong as it appears. It has red mixed into it. So we're gonna tone it down a little bit because we want that to come toward us. All right, and not necessarily the red of this object. All right, and we also want to feel a little bit of blue-green highlight right here. I just want this to go a little brighter. Okay, so now we're starting to get it. All right, the moment of strong light. Okay, when I talk in terms of gouache and some of the colors that I might want to use. All right, I'm just looking to see if I have a white here that I can grab hold of. And I do have this zinc white. I used it last week, and I said that it was a white that I wanted to be careful with. But that zinc white will make for a stronger highlight. All right, and now you're really seeing how these highlights are working. All right, and so just keep in mind that we can use that zinc, all right, in a way that really makes for but it doesn't mix very well with water. It's really kind of an interesting kind of highlight, but it's really strange too. All right, so now we're kind of just looking at some of the elements that we're working with. I have a little bit of a highlight over here, so I want to throw that highlight in because that makes your eye move as well away from the object. All right, which I think is important right now, and we're going to come back, all right, and try this again, and we're going to come down to the lower part. Okay, I'm just looking to see how certain colors are playing against here, especially some of the warmer colors and some of the values. Like for instance, do we really that area up above? That area up above creates a little bit of a problem value-wise when we go to focus. All right, because it pulls our eye too much to the top. All right, and you know we want to get this design. So really, what I'm going to go after is the design of this edge now. All right, to see how that is working and just some of the elements. There are vertical elements in here. All right, and of course this is that vase that's back there. We're not going to play up on that, but we are going to play up on some of the other contrasts and you know try to get things to feel like they're working. All right, so I have to come into this foreground to kind of make this happen. And truthfully, this is not a real strong dark down in here. All right, it has light highlights on it, so we really want to try and build that, and we want to try and build our focus a little bit more. This, by the way, we're not feeling the turn in this. All right, so we really want to feel the turn of the light from here. We want to feel it going up. All right, so I think you know you see me now doing this just to get the feeling of how it's going up. All right, and you know, not ignoring things, but I'm really thinking in terms of how am I seeing things and how things are turning away from me. And you know, a piece like this has to turn away from me right there. So how I decide to use the value in the color to reduce it, but yet make it, you know, make it come toward me at the same time. So at this point now, we're just using our violet to kind of adjust that and you know get the value to be as close to it as possible. All right, so I think you can kind of get an idea of where that's working. Do we want these little things to pop out at us right here? Maybe one of them we do, but I think that one of the things we can make a decision about, maybe not. So we'll just kind of flip them out a little bit. And you know, I'm just looking to see where some other little highlights are if we missed any. All right, because they make for that as well. And now I'm going to come back in here and darken this area in the middle here, because that is really important as a shape. All right, and now we're gonna kind of come back down in here, and we really want to work this, and you know, it's gonna be you squinting a little bit, understanding where the darker values are, all right, and how things change and move into one another. Like for instance, there's a dark that moves back into here, so we really want to feel that. And then, of course, this is the center, so you're always going to have a contrast or something more in the center, right? And I'm just looking at this also, one little piece of color right here, which I would want to turn away from me like that, so that it feels like it's making the turn of the glass. All right, and you know, I also want to come back with that because it's like a stronger dark. All right, and throw it maybe in here a little bit. All right, so that we're now starting to get that visual play. All right, and then am I satisfied with this left-hand side? Not exactly, it's not exactly right yet. Maybe it gets a little darker right there. All right, and again, we're really looking to see what it does in other places. So keep this in mind. I mean, I'm really looking to find my highlights, all right, and then try to find my contrast. And again, judging warm and cool, it's really interesting, but it's kind of like this is a green line here. Okay, and all of a sudden that's working. This breaks, by the way, so we don't want that to be so strong. And now we have a kind of a bluish kind of a piece right in the middle here that kind of takes away our eye from the from this here. All right, and we can kind of come back to some blue just to make sure that it's kind of like that a little bit. I think that works, so we're gonna just soften that a little bit, something like that. I'm gonna come down in here just to get my green light. There's green light going across here, so we really want to do that. And then we have the highlights on the other side. How strongly do we want to feel this in here? That's going to be something too we'll think about. And how strongly are we going to want to feel a kind of a warmish light right, or coolish light right here. I'm gonna make it warmer, some orange, but in a way there's a little bit of orange light going in there. So now you see that it's kind of working. All right, we've still got some of our highlights that have to go in. These are kind of cool, smaller highlights, don't really develop anything too strongly over here a little bit. All right, and you know, we do have this darker shape that kind of goes like this. All right, so it's carrying around. I'm just looking at the way I'm handling this upper part right here, and whether, you know, I just need to kind of play with this a little bit in here. All right, to see how that's working. All right, because I really don't know if I really want to feel the dark so strongly in the shape. And so now we've got it something in that order, and I'm just looking to make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing. You know, again, we can kind of go into some of the dark shapes. Okay, and again, we have that dark shape here, so now you see me putting that in. All right, and this is relatively dark here, kind of warm and cool. So you can see how I can just kind of play with that. I'll play this again against this, and maybe you have that reflection, that warm reflection in there, but really push it up against that light so it jumps out of it. All right, and you know, I want to try and get that bend that's in here. We're almost done, by the way, in making this work, and I'm going to be sending it to you. All right. But you know, just so that you see how I'm handling this now. All right, and how much I want to make things appear and disappear. Right. So over here, this is mostly cool light. So when we really start to work with this over here, we're talking about cooler light. And again, it's pulling our eye away. We have blue, green light down in here. So, you know, you can see how I'm handling that object in the beginning. All right. And, you know, I also want to think in terms of shadows and highlights, even highlights outside this form. All right. There is a glass up here. Everything is relative. So the amount of dark to light is really, really important. And sometimes we don't make our areas, we don't think to tone down an area, but you can see what that does to making this kind of stand out. All right, that we don't have the just the gray. All right, because the gray itself creates a little bit of a problem. And you know, I may even adjust some of the color combination against this object so that you kind of get a feel for how that's working. And try one more little highlight here. Kind of a reddish highlight on the edge here. So that you can become more aware of that. And because we're really looking here, we really want to get a little bit more of a light there. And you know, again, it's that combination of the orange light in here that I think is fascinating too. And so we want to try and build that. And I think that you see now how all of this is coming together. All right, but we're painting shape and value and color, and we're working where the focal point is, and then we're working away from. So, you know, if anything, I want you to recognize how important it is to do that. All right. And don't be afraid to put things down. Just know that, like, for instance, this becomes a dark over here, and the space next to it becomes a lighter space. So, you know, this becomes a lighter space against it. All right. And you can kind of see how we're working that into there now. And yeah, it's working out pretty nicely, I think. All right, you can kind of go into getting this, and then let's just do this here a little bit more. All right, something like that, and a little bit darker as we have it up there, and you know, maybe that space there. I'm always looking at design, so don't think that I'm going to take things out or make them all darker. Sometimes it has to do with what I really want from this, right? And you know, I'll play things relative to one another just to see what that does. How strong that edge is up there, whether this needs to move together a little bit more. All right, and how much blue is in the in this, all right? So here you see me really throwing more blue in, just to get the feeling of the contrast. All right. But the darker I make things, the lighter this becomes. All right. So there you go. I think we're good to go. I'm going to send this off to you, and I'll take a photo of it so that you can see it. Is it finished at this point? Not really, not exactly yet, but it's in good shape. And I think that we're really building these kind of contrasts, which I feel is real important to you in the way you handle your designs. Okay. You know, do I paint with my fingertips? Sometimes I do. All right, in order to get things the way I want them. And will I put things on that perhaps maybe are not there? I may. All right, I mean, it's really interesting because you don't really think to do that, but you have to balance your piece. And if you don't balance your piece, then you have that is a problem. So just keep that in mind. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll see what we get from you all. All right. Okay. Take care. I'll bring this up closer so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like at this point. All right. Turn it toward you a little bit more. And I think I'll photograph it for you so you'll be able to see it as well. But this will give you an idea of how to make transparencies. And you know, one of the lines that I'm looking at, I think might be too strong is that line. So sometimes I even take my fingertip, put some you know, slick my finger and just go ahead and do it that way. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed it. What do I think of it? I think it's working. I think that if I was to give you any criticism, myself any criticism right now, it would be right here. All right, so give me a few seconds. I'm gonna do some finger painting. All right, but I think that the area that really bothers me is right here, and that may go a little darker and a little greener. All right, and so I'm playing with that as well. And also this other area, that's the area that really bothers me right here, because we really do need a light running right down the center of this right here. All right, somehow just the feeling of light going across that that moment there, so that we feel the transparency. All right, okay, so that's it, and I'll be sending you the copy of it, and you can kind of get an idea of how I managed to do that. I'm still working this area under the dollar bill that's in the water. All right, I can continue to do that right now, and that would I'd be spending a little bit more time, maybe adjusting the values or something on that line. I'm looking at it right here, thinking, okay, maybe I'm just really looking to see where that is. All right, but maybe this is a bit darker and cooler than I think right here. All right, so that may help it. All right, to just settle that area down and make it a little bit more transparent. Okay, so that's that. All right, I'll talk to you soon. All right, take care, and I hope you enjoyed this. All right, bye.